Joseph Mojo McCarthy, and as always, it's my intent to deliver something to you that will bring value to your life. I know you're exchanging your time, energy, and attention, so I want you to receive something back that's of equal or greater value, hopefully greater. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about two P words, practice and preparation, and they go together quite nicely, at least in my opinion. I'm going to start with a story. I was at a men's meeting many years ago, and the keynote speaker was Del Harris. And Del Harris has been a basketball coach at that point for 40 years or more, and has coached at all levels, from youth all the way up to NBA, and been a champion at all those levels. Thousands of players. And he announced to this room of guys that, guess who, of all the players he ever coached, of all the players he ever knew, practiced free throws more than any other player he ever met. And we were all thinking and trying to guess, and maybe you have somebody in mind. And then he said, you'll never guess, because it's Shaquille O'Neill. And we were like, you've got to be kidding. Shaquille O'Neill is terrible at free throws. And then he went on to say, that's exactly the point. We all have this common feeling that practice makes perfect. But that's actually not true. Only proper practice makes perfect, and it doesn't even make perfect, because there is no perfect. So really, it's proper practice makes progress, and progress eventually can become permanence. It's a little more complicated than practice makes perfect, right? And so what happened is that Shaquille O'Neal became really, really good at being really, really bad, because he practiced how to shoot free throws terribly. So he became an awesome, terrible free thrower. And that lesson just kind of stuck with me. It's been 20 years, I think, since I heard that story. And I think about it a lot, that when I'm preparing or practicing for whatever endeavor in my life, if my techniques are off, if I'm practicing in an improper way, I'm actually ingraining that habit, that process, and becoming really good at being really bad. I don't want to do that. I'm a trumpet player, as many of you know, and I didn't have private lessons when I first picked up the trumpet. And so I figured out how to make the noise and how to do the fingerings. But what I did not know, because I never had the proper training, is that the pressure that I'm putting on my lips to get the mouthpiece to stick is supposed to be as light as possible. The power of the instrument and the power of the notes that I'm producing shouldn't be from cramming the mouthpiece into my face, which I did for many years, but from expelling and blowing through the instrument with a lot of breath support. I didn't know any of this going into it, and so the natural instinct was the higher I got, the tighter my lips got, and I would just press that trumpet way into my face with it. My lips were like being pressed into my teeth, and it hurt, and it wasn't very sustainable, so I would tire quickly. And it wasn't until I started understanding what others were doing and picking up techniques. This is long before, look it up on YouTube and get a lesson. I would just watch the players who really did it well, and I started asking questions, especially when I worked my way up the ranks into second or third chair. I'd say, so how do you play those high notes? What are you thinking, or what's the technique? Because I would just cram that trumpet into my face and blow as hard as I could. And they said, well, the blowing part is right. You support it with your breath, but it's not about pressure on your lips. And then explain the technique. So I'd become really, really good at being very bad at the technique. I could actually produce the notes, but I couldn't do it for very long because I would tire, right? And just one of those illustrations of this principle that is so very true, that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And so if you're practicing improperly, you'll get really good at being really bad. So how do we avoid that, right? We're practicing and we think we're doing the right things, and we're actually ingraining bad habits. And it takes, of course, getting some input from others who know what they're doing, who are experts. Sometimes we can afford that, sometimes we can't. But as Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi love to say, that success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. And so by paying attention and looking carefully and asking questions, I can find out a lot without having to pay for the advice. And it's important then, if I get input, if I get feedback, not to be so prideful that I won't receive it, that I won't take it, that I won't make necessary adjustments. And so I heard this framework back when I was in my college days, and then my friend Rick Olson, who's a mentor to me, talks about it as well. He says, when you evaluate whatever it is that you're doing, ask yourself 3 questions. And it's a framework that's called stop, start, continue. And basically the 3 questions are, looking back on what I just did, whether it was sports or music or art or public speaking, whatever my effort was, evaluate it, and then decide what's really working there. I was nailing it there. I was in the flow. Keep doing that. Keep that. What should I stop doing? And this takes humility and openness to say, you know, that fell flat. That wasn't effective. That isn't really what I was trying to communicate. Stop doing that. And thirdly, change. What should I do differently? What's something that I've never even thought of that I could add to my repertoire that might enhance whatever my efforts are? And if I keep asking those questions, what should I stop doing? What should I keep doing? And what can I do differently? Then I can continue the improvement. So then my practice actually does make progress because I've made course corrections. I've adjusted along the way. And this is such a valuable lesson for life. Many of us get into the routines and the habits that keep us from having to think too much about anything because we're tired, because we got so many inputs, so many demands on our life. But the routines aren't necessarily helping us unless they're routines that have been refined, right? It's a process of refinement where we continually course correct and adjust. And quite honestly, a technique or a habit or a process that worked yesterday or 10 years ago or 15 years ago may need to be tweaked anyway, even if I was at the top of my game. Classic example is Tiger Woods when he was at the peak of his prowess, when he was considered by far not only the best golfer of his time, but the best golfer of all time, and was winning nearly every tournament that he was in, especially at the highest levels. He fired his golf coach and started to get a new swing, and everybody thought he was nuts. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's what we think. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But what Tiger Woods was thinking, as I've heard Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and some of the best at what they do, they never think that they've arrived. So this goes back to the idea of practice makes perfect. If we think that we've perfected anything, then we will stop seeking ways to improve. So some of the peak performers of all time, when they've been studied, the mentality is that I have never arrived. There's always a way to expand and to grow and to learn, which is true. Life offers limitless opportunities to expand and to grow and to learn. And the danger is thinking that we've reached some peak of perfection. That's just a sign of progress. And my coach once told me, she said, think of it this way, Joe, when you're ascending towards a goal, you start at ground zero, right? And just imagine that the first ledge is 10. And so you take the 10 steps required to get to that first ledge. Now that you've arrived there, you don't want to stop, right? You want to continue. But make what was now your ascent, make that your new base camp. So your 10 becomes 0 on the climb to the next 10. And I thought about that a lot. I thought, oftentimes I have this picture in my mind that I want to reach a certain destination, a certain peak, a certain summit, a certain goal, an aspiration. When I get there, finally I've arrived. I made it. And I want to plant my flag, set out a picnic table, videotape myself on a selfie, and declare to the world, yes, I'm there. I did it. And all of that is important, and it's valuable, and it's good, unless you stay there, right? Because from that mountain peak, suddenly you realize that there are endless mountain peaks beyond that with different kinds of beauty and challenges. So you rest, rejuvenate, replenish, even celebrate your victories and realize, okay, that summit now is my new base camp for the next climb. Super important, that mentality, so that we don't rest on our laurels. And there's this quote that I memorized when I was in junior high. And I don't know why it stuck out at me then, but it has served me well ever since. Adlai Stevenson, who said, on the plains of hesitation, bleached the bones of countless millions who at the dawn of victory sat down to rest, and resting died. On the plains of hesitation, bleached the bones of countless millions who at the dawn of victory sat down to rest, and resting died. And that doesn't mean don't ever rest. That just means don't stop there. Resting is different than retiring, right? And I can't even imagine the idea of retiring, because I can't imagine stopping this process of ever learning and growing and progressing. Because really life is growth. When you think about it, when you look at plants and animals and birds and all in yourself, life is growth. And in fact, if you're not growing, you're dying. There is no stasis. There's no permanence in life, right? We're growing or we're dying. We have the power of choice to progress. So all of that to say, practice, again, doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanence, So we got to be careful that we're practicing properly. Proper practice makes progress, right? And then course correction, evaluation, and ascension, the peak becomes your next ground zero.